All right, here we are. Welcome back to Bookwave. Today we're looking at A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. If you're new around here, you can check us out at our website at bookwave.club. I'm joined by Patman and Will. I'm your host, Scott. My open question to both of you and the audience is how would you describe Hemingway's writing style?
Simple and direct.
The epitome of male efficiency.
I like those. I like those better than, the typical word one might use, like dry and boring.
He still maintains a bit of beauty to the description of World War One and in Italy and what Henry goes through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think it's great. I think the way that he delivers the scenery is so, as I said, efficient. There was a tree over on this hill, and in between the tree, there was a road, and on the road, there were some dry leaves because the season was dry. And it's like you get a picture, and there's no crazy convoluted words or obscure metaphors. It's just, this is what I saw. And if I were to survey the land and describe to you as you were a cartographer so that you could make a detailed map of the area, this is what you would need to know. And it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
I feel like it switches between two different modes. Like you have that completely direct descriptive form of writing, and then it switches in some points to this really deep poetic
It's pared
monologue
down.
almost.
It's pared down prose along with some journalism involved.
Well, it's an insight into the mind of this man that he's made. And I know exactly what you're talking about, Scott. This monologue where it almost reminds me of Fight Club at some points, where it's truly that nonstop inner dialogue of the fears and the doubts and the hopes and the dreams all at once and in no particular order. And it's captivating, and it gets you through these massive like text walls for 3 or 4 pages. And at the end of it, you're like, wow, yeah, I see what's going on here.
Yeah, there's one little paragraph in the introduction of my copy that I think sums it up or says something pretty good about it. And it just goes, his comparatively plain, straightforward approach to fiction developed as a result of his experience as a journalist. First at school, where he edited the school newspaper, and then as a reporter for the Kansas City Star. Although he wrote for the Star for only 6 months, he adopted its in house style as his own, favoring short sentences, brief introductory paragraphs, and vigorous positive English.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that explains it very well.
So yeah, once you read that and then start reading Hemingway, you kind of get the feel like, yeah, he is kind of writing like a journalist might.
Yeah, it's like this detailed report of everything for the people at home, so that if you were delivering a report over radio or paper, you could understand what was going on.
Yeah, and I just can't help but think that, if this book was written by someone like Ayn Rand, it would be 2,200 pages easily.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
I I mean,
we know how Ayn Rand can stretch things out for a while.
Or even Dostoevsky.
Yeah, but Hemingway just takes the exact opposite approach. Just how much does the audience need to fully understand everything that I want to get across and
I
leave out everything else?
I want to speak to the Dostoevsky point, because I think what Dostoevsky would have done was start with section 5 and then do another 12 sections after that.
Yeah, kind of makes sense considering
And
the way
that would
Crime
be
and Punishment goes.
awful. Oh, I can already hate it. It doesn't exist, and I already hate it. So, do you think people need to read Hemingway? It's because, let me share a quick anecdote story with you. Probably 10 years ago, I asked my older sister for a list of all of the classic books that one ought to read so as to become pretentious. And Hemingway was like right
Yeah,
up on top of the list, right?
naturally.
Naturally. And that's
Yep.
why I read A Farewell to Arms the first time. But I will be quite forthright with you. It was to get the pretense. And I don't regret it, and I don't feel pretentious for reading it, and I don't shame people who haven't, but I think it's valuable to read these great classics, and that's what we've endeavored to do over the past year. And that's what I hope other people who listen will get out of this. Is not my opinion or your opinion or Pat's opinion about anything to do with the book, but the sheer fact that it gives us the stage to have opinions about thoughts that have been considered. And that's something that's gone on in A Farewell to Arms, and I think all of the books we read. And I'm wondering why you guys would suggest that people read these things.
I would agree with one special note. Be aware that this book was published in 1929 and it's a little bit dated.
Yeah.
You know, like a feminist wouldn't be happy reading this book, and, you know, I'm sure a whole lot of people wouldn't be thrilled about how he describes Othello in the latter half of the book.
I actually agree with what Will said, and I would also add that A Farewell to Arms is not just for general reading, but I would also say that it's good for people who want to go into reporting, journalism, or just learning how to write fiction. You can learn a lot of things from Hemingway in just one day, and then you can set off to write your own book just by understanding the prose that he offers.
Yeah, if we're talking to the part of our audience who wants to write, definitely have to read Hemingway. Read as much as you can. Get as much content under your belt so you have that much more to draw from.
And he also doesn't shy away from the really tragic stuff, too, especially when it comes to war and the character Henry's relationship with Catherine.
It's interesting now that we've got this lens of it's a report, because that's honestly the conclusion I was kind of coming to with these different sections. They were distinctly telling a thing, but it's more than telling. It was truly reporting on the state of one's existence in pre-war, during war, injury, hospital recovery, escape, threat of life, endangerment, love. And it's, you can read these things and say, oh, that's horrifying. That's horrible to have been in the First World War. Like, and this is a man who wasn't even deep in the front lines, that he is in the ambulance. And it's a report. I'll just say the word 50 times this recording.
And also his interactions with the other soldiers and some of the villagers.
Yeah, and the priest as well.
Yeah, definitely the priest.
As in, like, one of his first interactions with the priest is when he tells him, hey, you should go visit the Abruzzi because the fighting's going to stop during the winter. And then when he comes back and the priest is all disappointed that he didn't go and he had his visit all set up for. And the whole rest of the book, it was in the back of my head, like, how is that going to resolve? Like, where's this going with the priest? But it didn't really go anywhere. It just kind of ended the way it ended, and you don't really get any closure. So, like, in a lot of other books, without this writing style, you would definitely expect that to come up again. But in his style of just reporting the events, it's just part of the story that there is no follow-up.
And you can also hear that in the other soldiers who are struggling with this kind of contempt and belief of what war actually is. Some of them say that war is good for them, and others are just kind of scared and they don't know how to talk about it. And if they do talk about it, about how bad war is, then they are, I guess, disenfranchised in a way. They're let down. And Henry doesn't offer any kind of, anger or buff way of just talking about war. He is stoic about it. And he doesn't try to disrespect the other men. He just offers what he thinks.
And it's almost like he's trying to fight through the propaganda as well. Like, back in the 1920s, you could only assume that most of the news that the American people are getting is like the glory of the Allies and all this and all that. But this is a book just about the facts and how war just rips apart families and destroys people's lives.
War is not won by victory. That's one of the quotes.
I think my favorite part, I don't even know if that's the right word, but the section, I think it was section 4, which was the retreat. That was the most interesting to me because, especially the second time through, it stuck out more that like this is this crazy thing that all of these thousands of people had to do, tens of thousands of people, they had to retreat across country, and the roads are made of dirt and it's raining and there's mud and you're losing carts and you're losing horses and people are running for their lives and other people are killing you because they don't know who you are, and other people even more so are killing officers because they're retreating and they don't have their troops. And it was just this crazy telling of this thing that happens in a war, and it's the details that you don't think about.
Yeah, and that just goes to show his experience in the Italian military definitely helped him write this book because he had a first-hand experience of it.
Yeah.
So he knew everything that was actually happening. So he probably didn't experience much of the stuff that Frederick Henry did, but he definitely knew enough to write a story about it, get all the facts right.
Mm-hmm.
And you could read this book and not know much about history and still like not have any idea how the war ended. That's just how open-ended the end of the story is.
Yeah, it was not about the war, but the war was there. And you had this sort of sub-story of the war, but it was really this tragic love story. I'm quite fond of the book. I like it a lot. I'll continue to read it.
Yeah, it's definitely a recommendation. I would say if you are going to read the classics, start with this one because it's really easy.
And tragic. And if you do start with this one, read The Sun Also Rises next, because you need to put something on that wound. So otherwise you won't read another classic tragedy for a very long time. Or another classic book. That last section. My God.
And if you have read this book already, we hope you're all right.
What other major themes do you guys want to discuss?
I guess the other thing, it's just a small thing, but goes back to what we've been talking about with what good is war and how it affects everyone. Henry doesn't find the idea of earning medals or just the overall status of victory in war claims to be a good thing. All he does is just worry about when he'll get his next block of cheese, his next bowl of pasta, and he also relies on drinking wine to drink, just to end all the, bad stuff, everything. There are some instances where he looks for bottles of wine and he'll even go to greater lengths to get it.
You calling him an alcoholic?
I'll call him an alcoholic. He's
Come out and
definitely
say
an
it if you're going to
alcoholic.
say it.
I wouldn't exactly say that he's an alcoholic.
Oh, well, what
I
do you
just
say?
did.
Yeah.
Well, you did.
Definitely.
I
Probably.
did.
He gets jaundice as a result of his alcohol consumption while he's recovering from his injury.
Yeah.
Like the nurses find like 8 bottles of liquor hidden in his hospital room.
And that was like only half the stash. But I mean, what else are you going to do? You've got this like levy from your grandpa back home every month that comes in, and it's a war.
Kind of hard to blame him, but you can't shy away from the facts.
Cigarettes, alcohol, cheese. The man enjoyed life.
Yeah.
And what it had to offer. He definitely wasn't consumed by the context he was living in. He just did his best to do what he could. And that was pretty impressive. You know?
In part 3, he talks about his confrontation with like the Italian military and how during the retreat they were talking about the rumors that the Germans had taken on Italian uniforms and they were all all the military police were gathering up all of the officers, and he had to escape the military that he was a part of.
Yeah, well, they were shooting officers that were retreating because there was a new army and new officers to replace them, right?
That's
Yeah.
really scary.
Yeah, so
That was crazy.
he doesn't just talk about, how war is hell, like in the fighting and the waiting and in the lack of food and supplies, but it's also the mental effect that it has on friendlies start turning on each other.
Mm-hmm.
He really covers all the bases without saying too much. And it's really nice. I think my favorite part was in part 4 when he was just having the billiards game with the one Italian officer, and they just started talking about like the contemplation of death and
You mean the really old man?
yeah.
Was he an officer? I thought he was just a really old man.
I thought he
Like-
was a retired officer.
Oh yeah, he had fought in a former war.
Yeah.
Right.
I might be getting things a little mixed up. But yeah, there was an old guy that was retired, really good at pool, and they just had that was probably my favorite section, my favorite conversation, when they were just contemplating death and the war and the relevance of religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the post-retreat escape sort of half-life lived in secret section. It was interesting.
That was right after he was reunited with Catherine.
Mm-hmm. In Milan.
So do we want to talk about the ending at all, or
No.
just kind of
You leave that for them.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so.
Makes me want to read The Great Gatsby soon, though.
Or his next book, The Sun Also Rises.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's next. No
Yeah.
question. But also, it'd be good to get into the Fitzgeralds and some other roaring 20s people
Mhm.
now that we are in 2020, taking a look back 100 years.
Maybe that should be the theme. Reading books from the 20s in the 20s.
In the 20s. Sounds good to me.
I think we can still get older than that too.
Yeah, I mean, we could sprinkle some Bible in there.
So until next time, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know how you felt about the book. May the force be with you.
Check us out on Anchor, YouTube, bookwave.club, Stitcher, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts.
We're going to roll out some more content real soon. So stick around. Later.